Hey again, guys. Day number 2 here. Pumping myself up a little bit with some Bears and Cubs stuff. Trying to just get by with some positive thoughts. So I want to kind of go over real quick yesterday what we did, and then we'll kind of take everything we did and advance it a step, or give you some different tools, some different things to do if you ran into some trouble. So again, purpose of these cars, we're trying to actively kind of map out the joints for our brain and our nervous system. When they trust where we tell them the end range is, they allow us a little more freedom of movement because they've been shown, here's your end range, you can move freely within this without experiencing pain, without worrying about getting hurt. We also talked about kind of how to get the most out of that hip car. So kind of the specific sequence that we want to try to move through this. If you were cramping at all yesterday or feel sore at all today, that's totally normal. We're probably using some new tissue that you're not used to using. Even if you're working out multiple times a week, you're generally probably doing squats and lunges and different sorts of things. This type of stuff is very unique. We're really trying to teach you good body control, not for the purpose of getting good at cars, but so that, when you go up the stairs or pick your kids up or play with your kids, your joints are just that more robust and you have that much more control of them. So if you're feeling sore at all, kind of work within your limits, but by all means, this is very low load and very low threat. You can do this type of stuff if you're feeling a little bit of a good normal sore. I want you to think about kind of where you might have hit some problem spots, where you felt disconnected from your body a little bit, or where you felt really blocked up, or where you felt like you had to cheat to try to basically coerce some more movement out of either one of those hips. So today I'm going to try to show you a couple different ways to do the cars, and then also a couple different kind of correctives or strategies to do them and not allow yourself to cheat. Because it is really difficult. You're focusing so hard on one hip, the rest of your body kind of gets forgotten, and before you know it, you're kind of bending all over the place. Which really brings me to the next point. We're really trying to isolate a single joint. If you're trying to do a hip car with the left hip, but your right hip is kicking back or you're leaning to the side, you're not only kind of introducing false movement and thinking, oh, this is all from my left hip, look how high my foot is, but you're also kind of taking away the stabilization that you need. So when you're doing this car on your left hip, your right hip needs to learn how to stabilize when that left hip is going through everything. Your right hip needs to stabilize when your left hip is so flexed, your knee is kind of up to your belly button. When your hip kicks back and you lean to the side, you don't get that stabilization that we're also trying to coach with some of this stuff. So I'll go through kind of a couple compensations that are pretty common. This is not exhaustive, but I think I have 5 here. So we'll run through those, but don't ignore anything else that you notice on yourself. These are just kind of common ones that I see. So the first 2 are the plant side hip and the plant side knee. So like I'm saying, if we're going to hip flexion and I hit my end range, if I want to pick this up higher, I can either bend my knee back, right? Or I just cut my limit right there. So oftentimes, even a slight bend, a tiny bend is enough to kind of undo this whole chain of stability and tension. So think about flexing this quad as hard as you can, push your foot down through the floor and stay as tall and stiff as you can on that backside hip, backside leg. So the other one is going to be the backside hip, number 2. So as we get into internal range of motion, as we run out, it's really easy. If this is my limit, which it is, I'm not going to move through my left hip at all anymore. But if I bend my backside hip, my foot comes higher. So I think, oh, I've brought it up as far as I can, but that's from my right side hip. That's not from the hip I'm trying to target. So backside knee, backside hip, laterally flex away. So in that same position, if I run out of room on internal rotation, if I lean away, I get what looks to be more internal rotation, but that's not. That's just me leaning away, lateral flexion of the trunk. Same thing is contralateral rotation. So now I won't flex, but if I rotate, I get what appears to be more space and more range here. Again, that's not coming from here, that's coming from my trunk. The last one is a hip hike. So when I run out of room again, you'll notice the last three were all about internal rotation. We're all pretty jammed up on internal rotation. So when I run out of room here, I can hike up from this hip. Again, that's not actually coming from internal rotation. It's not even coming from my hip. That's my pelvis hiking up. So that's a front side one to work on. So pay attention to all of those. Be as strict as you can with not letting the backside hip or knee bend at all, as well as the trunk flexing, rotating, and the front side hip hiking. So here is 6 different variations I'll show you real quick. All right, so first one is going to be sideline. So it is helpful to have something to grab onto here. We're going through the same motion as the standing car. So I flex and adduct. My foot and knee are pushing into the ground. I externally rotate. I abduct. I internally rotate and extend. Extend basically meaning squeeze your glute. Doesn't mean arch your back. Just means squeeze your glute and finish. Same thing on the way back around like we always do. So that's sideline. We can go to supine. If we do supine, we can add a bit of a glute bridge to it. So I flex and adduct, externally rotate, abduct, internally rotate. When I hit the floor, I push into my glute bridge. So it's a good way to get some active extension on this. And then repeat to finish. Last one on the ground is going to be quadruped. Same idea. So here I need to make sure I keep my abs a little tight. I don't want to get movement by arching my back. So I flex and adduct. That's a tough variation just because you're limited with space between you and the floor, as well as you get some core stability and some arms and shoulder work because you got to hold yourself up there. So, think very advanced bird dog. You're trying to actively balance on 3 limbs while one's moving. The last 3 here, oops. So these are going to include what we call blocks. So blocks are basically preventing you from cheating in a certain direction. So the first block, just take a ball or something that you can fit between your calf and your hamstring. Go through the same movement. So if we're focusing on all movement through the hip, I shouldn't be flying all around through the knee. So that really keeps you pinned up and focused on hip movement. The last 2, we're just going to use a door frame basically. So first one will block laterally. So inside arm grabs the frame, outside arm reaches across. I can go through my hip car and you'll realize, holy crap, I was cheating a ton before. I didn't realize how blocked up I was here. So this prevents that lateral flexion, hips kicking out, or rotation. The last one is just going to be using the door frame behind you here. So push into it. Keep your inside plant leg, glute, and quad squeezing. And now I have nowhere to go as far as kicking my hip back. So try the sideline, supine, and quadruped, as well as blocking with something behind your knee and blocking laterally and posteriorly with the door frame. Give those all a shot, and I'll be checking in tomorrow. Thanks.